Hello and welcome. Maybe you made a guess on the last video on what this one was about. I'm going to circle the unit again. That's right, Fresh Thanatos, LS Vor, 30 Salmal, and appreciate you, Skotach. I do make a nice diorama. Mr. Daly knows what's up. Forget Cyclops, Minotaurs, Spearmen, Hetyroi, and Myrmidons? That's right, this video is about the Laser Croc, also known as the Petsuchos, or maybe the petsobek, which uses the power of Crocodilopolis to get more range. Prior to Retold, it used to be just Petsuchos. Why was the name changed? Well, Suchos is definitely a Greek translation of the word sobek, the minor god you can choose to train these guys, so there would be no reason to have the Greek word for the unit in the Egyptian pantheon. But what about the other root word, pet? I have some doubts that petsobek is any more correct than Petsuchos was. I asked some guy on Reddit who seemed to know ancient Egyptian, and he told me that it would probably be something like padsobek, meaning gift of Sobek, which sounds pretty darn ancient Egyptian to me. Additionally, the technology of breeding them to petsobeks is Crocodilopolis, which is still an extremely Greek word. I'm going to keep calling them Petsuchos for now, but is it Laser Croc, or the better rhyming Laser Gator? Or maybe Croczilla? More on that later. Before finding out anything useful, let's do some armchair biology on this so-called Petsuchos model. As we all know, alligators have wide snouts, and crocodiles have thinner ones. Alligators have cute little button teeth that only show from the top with a closed mouth, while crocodiles have vicious fangs that protrude from both directions. Alligators have strong, mountainous scoots, while crocodiles have soft and mild scoots. Devs get the A rating from me, correctly modeling the Petsuchos after the Nile crocodile. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. Not to mention, the EE one didn't even have teeth. What I did like about the EE and original model was its projectile. The old projectile was instant and showed that it dealt a lot of damage in the tooltip. It felt very powerful. Now it looks very nice, but the damage over time doesn't feel quite as impactful. I think they changed it for some realism, or verisimilitude, if you will, in line with the long duration of the projectile itself. It does not seem to really affect balance at all. I can live with it, and maybe I'll get used to it. An important component of the 2-second attack is that you can move once the projectile comes out, which takes only about 1 second. Despite this, their movement speed is so slow that you can't really kite even average speed units. Attacking with Petsuchos is a commitment, so knowing the numbers you need is important. If you're like me, you will now be hoping that you can double your DPS by animation canceling the beam and then attacking again right away. I tested this myself, but found that it wasn't the case. Focus fire is arguably a more important type of micro for Petsuchos than kiting. It depends on your target, but the Petsuchos does have the ability to focus down even heroes. In a recent patch, their damage against heroes was halved. This was probably a good idea. All of the trials you're about to see take place on the recent patch that came out on October 10. You can just imagine what it was like to try to beat masked Petsuchos before then. What you're watching now is an equal number of Petsuchos versus Hero Arcus. This is not a population equivalent match, and would only work in the situation where your opponent does not micro for demonstration purposes. While not realistic for a typical 1v1 game, Petsuchos are one of the best options for massing during the Wonder Age. You can keep Eclipse up almost constantly, and your Petsuchos will be able to defeat heroes even without micro. Eclipse not only makes your Petsuchos deal a bit more damage, it also makes them tankier. Combined with Wonder Age's HP doubling, they are as tough to deal with as an army of Sparky Boom Boom men. All Petsuchos come with a passive ability called Illuminate. This reveals a 25 range area around its attack target for 6 seconds. I found in testing that this felt like a pretty short amount of time, as you can see the citizen disappearing before I can even walk over to hit it again. You might think Illuminate would be useful to track an attacked unit around terrain. Something I realized in testing is that the Petsuchos' natural line of sight is already larger than its attack range. Illuminate does not really add much to the unit in this situation. You can see here that even a long-ranged archer like the Gastropheteros can have issues tracking its target, so the Petsuchos is good for that. It's just not because of Illuminate, it's because the Petsuchos naturally has one of the highest ranges and line of sights in the game. Other long-range siege units like the Catapult do not have the Petsuchos' 100% accuracy. Keep in mind that even with Illuminate, your attack will be stopped by objects in between you and the target. Our little guy found a lucky gap between the trees here, but again, it wasn't Illuminate that helped. I can only really think of one use case for this ability. If you attack an army you are in a face-off with, you can do some scouting behind it. Speaking of the attack, how much damage does this thing actually deal? 10, 12, 40, 50? The wiki, which assumedly comes from the game files, says 40 pierce and 10 divine. My tests found this to be correct. It does not seem to be based on any stated projectiles number or attack speed, you just have to check the game files. This really should be patched to say 40 and 10, it's simply incorrect. The attack speed on the unit correctly says 2 seconds. I verified this by eyeballing it against a hoplite who attacks once per second. The windup is 1 second, and the beam lasts for 1 second. Sobek's other myth unit, the Roc, can help Petsuchos to do some raiding, despite their slow movement speed. The number of attacks to take down a villager is crucial to plan these raids. Greeks, Egyptians, and Norse take 2, while Atlantean citizens take 3, so bring an appropriate number of laser crocs. The biggest challenge in such a raid will be the hero Atlantean citizen, which takes many more lasers to defeat, and can actually just rush the Petsuchos down and defeat it right back. If you wanted to load 10 Petsuchos into a Roc and raid the Atlanteans, I won't stop you. It might just work. Once again, the Wonder Age is hard to reach, but the Petsuchos can do much better in that case. The damage you see here is about what their damage was like prior to their nerf against heroes. There is one hero citizen in the mix here. Despite not waddling very fast, it can be hard for villagers to escape if you pin them against a woodline or otherwise, thanks to that long-range, 100% accurate attack. For a visual of how long that range is, I've set some of the longest range units in the game against a mirror tower. Petsuchos share the trait with Gastropheteros of being able to outrange towers, while dealing much more damage for their population. On naval maps, this makes them an excellent unit who cannot quite swim, but can reach across long bodies of water from the shore to help your naval units fight. Let's take a step back and compare the Petsuchos to your other heroic myth unit options as the Egyptians. The Scorpion Man has just slightly more survivability than the Petsuchos, but is a frontline unit. That says good things about the Petsuchos' survivability as a ranged unit to me. The main benefit of the Scorpion Man is its movement speed compared to the other two, but most people will just have them as a result of wanting to get the Ancestors' god power. I'm not saying that the Scorpion Man is bad by any means, just that I'd rather have laser crocs. The Scarab is a myth unit which is great against buildings like the Petsuchos, but with much more damage. It's more of a melee siege weapon than a generalist. Its tankiness is much higher, but it also costs 1 more population. Its acid spray on death is quite strong in Retold, and underutilized in my opinion. Scarabs are more vulnerable to being countered than Petsuchos, as their tankiness and acid spray both do very little to stop a hero from stopping them. Both Sekhmet and Sobek have somewhat weak god powers compared to Nephthys, so you're more likely to see Scorpion Men in most games. Another heroic myth unit I thought it interesting to compare to is the Atlantean Satyr. The Satyr does very high damage, especially with its unique technology Gemini, which is researched for this otherwise vanilla heroic age fight. It has similar survivability to the Petsuchos, perhaps a bit less, with a bit more movement speed. The damage values are hard to compare on paper, so I wanted to see how they did in a large heroic age combat. Despite their lack of a charged special attack, and not being able to use their superior range in this fight, the Petsuchos eked out a slight win. I ran a quick archer versus archer battle after to show you that it was the myth units who made the real difference in that fight. Finally, let's run some tests against another of the Petsuchos' competitors, the Phoenix. If you're going myth heavy, want something ranged which is good against buildings, and are playing Isis, you have the choice in Mythical Age of switching to Phoenixes. Another beautiful unit for sure. I don't see them in a business sense as competitors, so much as the Mothra to our Godzilla. Wait a minute, now I can get a better look at them teeth. Yeah, that's a crocodile alright, so scientifically accurate. The Petsuchos easily win in a pitched combat against their fellow Hamon users, which they should, as this isn't what the Phoenix is for. You want to use Phoenixes if your opponent is going melee units. They can complement something like camels or elephants, whose counter would otherwise be infantry or cavalry, who cannot attack something in the sky. Let's see how Petsuchos do against their Mythical Age counterpart in a large battle with all infantry and cavalry. Phoenixes deal splash damage, which should make them shine more in this battle as well. Unfortunately for them, the Petsuchos took out their front line too fast, outpacing the Phoenix's splash damage, and then turned their lasers to the sky. As a quick sidebar, I wanted to compare the Petsuchos against a couple other Mythical Age units. First, 4 Petsuchos versus Mythical Age House. Here we have population equivalent Phoenix destroying a house much faster. Next, another myth unit that in Retold was given divine damage, the Lampades. They are comparable to the Petsuchos in house destruction and have great special abilities, but don't have the Petsuchos' long sieging range. Finally, the Medusa benefits from burning pitch, giving them a 4 times multiplier against buildings. It seemed the qualification for a myth unit benefiting from this technology was holding a bow, and not their type of damage, which is a bit strange. The Medusa Matriarch in Retold has slightly more range than an upgraded Petsuchos, so the Croc is lucky they are not competing for the same slot in their pantheon. I ran the Lampades test a few times as an example and got a few seconds difference each time. So I calculated the actual Mythical Age house DPS of each unit and put it on a handy bar graph here. On paper, the Petsuchos is actually the slowest of all 4 to destroy the building. I would still much prefer them over Lampades for that purpose due to their range, or for sieging down hero units immune to the chicken attack. The Medusa is the overall clear winner, combining all the best attributes of the Petsuchos and Lampades together, while destroying buildings even faster than a Phoenix. They do cost the most per population, but in late Mythical Age, this is generally less of an issue. I divided resources other than favor by 10 for this comparison to make it clearer. The last test here will be, who can destroy a Migdol the fastest? These babies are outfitted with masons, architects, and sun-dried mud brick. The mythical Petsuchos is dealing 48 pierce and 12 divine damage every 2 seconds, while the Phoenix is dealing 40 hack and 50 crush damage every 2.7 seconds. I put the Petsuchos in the line of fire of the Migdol for comparison purposes, although normally they could just stay out of range. The Phoenixes were the winners here, but not by enough that I would make them for sieging. Sure, none of them were technically lost due to their egg mechanic, but in a real game, they would be facing priests, who could easily target their large model, and they have to get to almost melee range to use their attack, despite technically being ranged. Bonus time! Leave your guess in the comments of what the next video will be about. Any correct answers will get a shout out in the next video. For now I must say, see you later alligator, in a while crocodile, and adios Petsuchos. The Laser Crocs lost in a direct fight against their Heroic Age counterparts, but cost less, and work best when you can maneuver their range to avoid a direct fight. Their scales stand up well to attacks if they are caught out, but they still must be careful. A large enough mass of them can be terrifying for your opponent, whether it is the Heroic, Mythical, or even Wonder Age. Consider giving me a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe to the channel to help it grow. Until next time.